Atlantic Canada. It is moderated by your Member of Parliament for St. John's South, Mount Pearl, and the Minister of Veterans Affairs, Seamus O'Regan. Please welcome your MP, Sean Casey from Charlottetown, la députée de South Shore St. Margaret's, Bernadette Jordan, le député d'Acadie-Bathurst, Serge Cormier, and the member from Cumberland-Colchester, Bill Casey.
Where are they going? Come back! You know, the schedule, as we all know, is kind of fluid. And then we were so thrilled when we got to follow François-Philippe Champagne. You know, because zero energy with him. We got nowhere to go but up. You know, I got to say just quickly about François-Philippe. You know, in Newfoundland, we're known for a fair bit of energy. And he came in for a 2-day visit with me and Nick Whalen in St. John's. And I swear to God, that was about a month and a half ago, and everyone is still like, who was that guy? Oh my God. I think what I'd like to do today is kind of bring you all in on a little secret that so many of our fellow members of Parliament know. And that is the most effective, most disciplined, and most driven regional caucus in Canada is your Atlantic Canada caucus. Oh yeah, look, you can ask them. They may not be happy about it. It's an amazing opportunity that we have in so many ways. It's an amazing opportunity. Ken MacDonald, I see you, don't you worry. He's waving there in the back. The only fellow that the Prime Minister will allow to heckle in the House of Commons because he's just so good at it. But we knew right from the get-go we had an amazing opportunity. We had 4 Liberal provincial governments, and you just heard from our 4 premiers. Just think about that moment. And I was pointing out yesterday an amazing moment where we talked about mental health with a full house here at a national political convention. Take a step and just take a pause and just think, here we had 4 Liberal premiers in sync, working together, and backed up, shoulder to shoulder, with every single member of Parliament in Atlantic Canada a Liberal. That is really something, but as well, it's an extraordinary responsibility, I think, to make sure that we get stuff done, because we've got no excuse, right? We should be and are all reading from the same hymn book. Anyway, so we're gonna talk a little bit, I think, about what we've been doing in Atlantic Canada, and I think, if I could just say to you, I think that resonates nationally. When given the opportunity to work together, what can be accomplished? That's an important point to make no matter where you live in Canada. So we'll talk about what we've done and where we hope to go. So we've got Sean Casey, who I guess you could describe as the Liberal class of 2011. Singularly? Pretty much. And
there were 2 of us,
yeah.
But Ted Chu didn't reoffer, so I'm it.
There you are.
Yeah, I'm going to celebrate the 7th anniversary of my election on May the 2nd, and all the members of the class of 2011 will be there.
Can you speak on behalf of all of them?
I most certainly can.
With authority. Sean, it should be noted too, Sean is one of 2 elected couples in Canada, correct?
Yep. Jeff and Kelly Regan are the other one.
Yeah. Good on you. You and Kathleen. Yep. Yeah. The newly elected chair of the Fisheries Committee and the first woman to hold that position, Bernadette Jordan. That's pretty great.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I know. Bernadette was our first chair of Atlantic Caucus, and you get the opportunity to go at National Caucus, to go to the mic on behalf of your region with the Prime Minister there and all your fellow members of Parliament. And it's an amazing opportunity to really bring forward an issue that you want to get the Prime Minister's attention, ministers' attention from across the country, and your fellow members of Parliament. And it would always be the last 3 minutes of our Atlantic Caucus meeting where she's herding the cats that Bernadette would be like, what am I taking to the mic? We had to agree on one thing, and it was tough to do, but she managed to do it. Serge Cormier, first of all, Parliamentary Secretary for Immigration, and how excellent it is to have an excellent Atlantic Canadian Member of Parliament on such an important file for us. Serge?
Thank you very much, Seamus. Yes, this is a very important file, and I'm very happy to work on that file. Coming from Atlantic Canada, I know how tough it is to have more newcomers coming here for this pilot project I'm working on with Minister Sen and all the other MP from Atlantic Canada. I think it's a good pilot project, and it's very successful so far, and I think we'll do very good with this project. Yeah.
And you know a thing or two about the fishery as well.
Yeah, well, my dad was a fisherman for all his life. I fished with him many times. Proud of him, and I was when I first was elected, the PM called me and said that I want to appoint new parliamentary secretary to fisheries and ocean, and this for my dad. When I told him the news, he was crying basically. So he was very proud of me, but I'm very proud of him that he made us, our family, like. Make sure that we had everything on the table every single day, whether it was hard time fishing back then. But I'm very proud of him and very proud to work with you guys also as a Atlantic MP.
Right on. Bill Casey is chair of the Health Committee, and he'd like me to point out to all of you that he's wearing his pharmacare socks. Pretty swanky.
They were passed out by the Nurses Association.
Yes.
And I feel nurses have more credibility in this healthcare debate than anybody. And they support the National Pharmacare Program, as do I and many others.
As a son of a nurse, I am forced to agree with you.
A son of a nurse?
Yes.
Seamus,
yes,
can I tell a little story about Bernadette?
Oh, here we go.
I want to tell a story about Bernadette Jordan.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
Please.
Yeah, something happened with Bernadette that I thought I'd never hear. But Bernadette was our first chair of Atlantic Caucus, and she made the decision that we won't go to National Caucus, we'll only bring in one issue. And that's what we did. All the time, Bernadette was the chair of Atlantic Caucus. And it turned out to be very effective. And the other caucuses started to see this, that we were more effective because we only brought one issue up instead of like 12 or 13. So one day, I forget who it was, but the chair of Ontario Caucus said, "We've learned a lesson from Atlantic Canada." Never thought I'd hear those words. And they said, we're going to just, from now on, we're going to bring one issue to caucus. And he proceeded to give us about 8 issues, and they never did. They were never able to bring it down to one issue. So our caucus is still the most successful caucus, and I attribute that to Bernadette Jordan. Thank you, Bernadette.
Here, here. So when you look at, well, let's begin with some of the things that we've been able to do with this opportunity that we've been given, Sean. And I mean, some of them are very specific to Atlantic Canada. And in terms of what we hear at the doors and what we hear from our constituents, some of them are national in scope, like the Canada Child Benefit.
Let me start with this, Seamus, because I don't think it can be said often enough what a profound honor it is for us to be up here and to be talking to you about what we do and what the government does. But we only get the chance to do that because of what you do and what you have done. And I know I speak for everyone on the stage here when I say to you, the Liberal Party, the grassroots, the Liberal Party, the people who do the volunteer work, the people who engage in the debates, the people who share the values, thank you. No person is bigger than the party, certainly not the four people on the stage, and you are the party, and we get to do what we do because of what you do. On the topic of the Canada Child Benefit, just to put this in perspective, and this will ring particularly true and pertinent for you, Seamus, there is one federal government department that has its national headquarters outside the National Capital Region, and that's the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is located in Charlottetown. All the other federal government departments are in Gatineau or in Ottawa. In that national headquarters, there are around 1,200 employees. The payroll is around $100 million a year. It is a huge economic cog for Prince Edward Island. The Canada Child Benefit brings more than the payroll of the national headquarters of the Department of Veterans Affairs into Prince Edward Island every single year, tax-free. That's how big it is.
To me, I'm going to just bring it, Sean was great when talking about the big picture and how much it brings to our areas. But I'm going to take it down to an individual level. And I had a young woman in my office, single mom, 3 kids, and she said the difference it has made for her and her kids is the difference between having fruit for their lunches when they go to school or having junk. The difference for her was having new clothes for her kids when they went to school. And she said for the first time, she said, I was able to buy myself a winter coat as well as my 3 kids. And I think that is what is really important.
And just to continue, maybe, Seamus, on that, just to give you a perspective of that, and I'm sure you have your numbers also, but only in my riding of Acadibaters, each month, there's $3.6 million coming each month, helping more than 10,000 families with an average payment of $550 per month. So $3.6 million each month to help those families in need. So that program is, for me, one of the best programs that PM Trudeau and our team were able to put in place. Tremendous program to help families.
I think the Canada Child Benefit is going to go down as one of the lasting legacies of this government, Bill.
Definitely.
I see the title of this is Growing the Middle Class in Atlantic Canada, but for me, the biggest challenge I have is survival of my smallest communities. And to me, they're very important, but there's 2 things that are helping for the first time. One is the child benefit, and the other is the beginning of internet access, which is absolutely important. You can't be a fisherman, you can't be an artist, you can't run a tourist facility, you can't do anything without internet access now. And our Connect to Innovate program is the beginning. It hasn't solved all the problems, and we need more, and we're going to push for more. But for my small communities, it's internet access is the key to survival, and there's hope now for the first time. For years, I've never had any options to help small communities, but now with internet access, we do have an opportunity to help these communities survive.
So much of our time is occupied speaking about the smaller towns and the more rural parts of our constituencies. Some of our constituencies are almost entirely rural. And I think one of the most important things that we've done as a government in terms of growing the middle class, but also helping these small communities thrive, as Bill said, is our Connect to Innovate program. And I always keep repeating when at home, it gives us the ability to compete with the world and thrive at home. And that's an incredible thing. I mean, 20 years ago, we were talking about this when we had some idea of what the internet could do for rural communities. But it's being realized now. And it is a bit of an upfront investment, but my goodness, what a difference it's making for small businesses and medium-sized businesses in smaller parts of this country. Well, geez, I'm just not used to all of you agreeing with me. This is not.
We don't agree.
This is not Atlantic
caucus,
Caucus.
It's not an Atlantic Caucus meeting.
Not at all. Nobody's throwing anything. No.
Let me pick up on that for 1 second. You seem like you're struggling there, Seamus.
Yes. Thanks.
Blindsided,
actually. I'm still in shock.
So last week there was an Atlantic Canada-wide announcement that took place in Charlottetown at the Startup Zone. And this was an announcement of $4.4 million for 505 student work integrated learning placements. So this is for students that are in the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. For students in that field to basically have a placement with an employer, and it's a wage subsidy program administered by Venture Canada for Atlantic Canada. It's part of the Atlantic Growth Strategy. It's part of the innovation pillar of the Atlantic Growth Strategy. But it's in furtherance of our commitment during the election campaign to deal with youth unemployment and to get people that all-important first job. The kids coming out of school, they can't get that first job because they don't have experience. And they can't get experience because they don't have the job. And this is something that deals with that head-on in a program that's about to start up, which was grown out of the Atlantic Growth Strategy.
Bernadette, one of the, I was just going to ask you about small craft harbors. I mean, no, well, because it's a huge passion of yours, but it's something that we've dedicated a fair amount of money in the budget to, and that was in no small part because of some significant lobbying, wouldn't you say?
Just a little.
Yeah.
Every chance I got. I learned from Adam Vaughn. Adam Vaughn, if anyone's ever had a conversation with him, it doesn't matter what you're talking about, he can bring it to housing. He's absolutely phenomenal at that. And I remember, I learned from him because I remember one day I was talking about abandoned vessels because that's also a passion of mine. And I said to him, I said, yeah, bring housing into that. And he said, do you know how many people live aboard van? And I'm like, I can't believe it. So I learned very, very quickly from Adam Vaughn that if I really wanted to promote something, I had to bring it into every conversation I had. So small craft harbors came into every conversation I had.
Merry Christmas. How are you doing, small craft harbors?
Are you eating lobster for Christmas? Do you know where they land? So one of the things, I'm very fortunate in my riding because I have a vibrant tourism sector, I have manufacturing, I have high tech, I have green energy. But the driver of our economies in my riding is still fishing. I have one of the largest lobster, between Colin Fraser and I, we have the largest lobster exporter in Canada. And our small craft harbors are a driver. And unfortunately, they've been neglected for far too long. And too many of them are in desperate need of help. You know, you can't expect people to do a job if they can't get their product onto land. And so I've been asking and asking and asking for the past 2.5 years for more money in small craft harbors, and I was really excited this year in Budget 2018 that there was $250 million put aside for small craft harbors.
Yeah. Hey, Serge.
I'll throw a little bit of French in the panel, Seamus, if you don't mind. Yeah, good. And before that, like, it's quite nervous answering question for all those people. It's more nervous answering question for them than in QP in the House of Commons, I'm telling you. Mais juste pour continuer sur ce que Bernadette vient de dire pour les ports pour petits bateaux, comme vous le savez, moi, mon père a pêché toute sa vie, à la retraite maintenant, mais j'ai à peu près entre 25 et 30 ports pour petits bateaux dans ma circonscription seulement. Alors, sans ces investissements, ces ports pour petits bateaux-là vont venir désuets et puis nos pêcheurs pourront plus justement apporter leurs produits à ces quais-là. Mais en plus de ça, le ministre Leblanc a mis en place un fonds des pêches de presque de 400 millions de dollars pour faire en sorte que soit nos usines de transformation de poissons et autres entreprises qui sont actives dans le secteur des produits d'évitement peuvent faire en sorte d'améliorer leurs usines, d'être à la fine pointe de la technologie pour prendre avantage de tous les nouveaux marchés que, justement, le ministre François-Philippe Champagne a débloqué pour nous, soit des baisses au niveau des tarifs aux frontières pour nos produits de fruits de mer. Alors, tous ces fonds-là qu'on met en place, que ce soit les ports pour petits bateaux ou aussi le fonds sur les pêches, je pense que c'est quelque chose qu'on doit remercier grandement notre collègue, le ministre Leblanc. And please say that I thank him on stage. Maybe I'll have one small craft harbor project this year, okay? So this is investment that we're making that is, it's good for the economy of our fishing sector.
And Serge, Brian Gallant a dit quelle formidable opportunité nous avons ici. And the fact that we have every government aligned, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean we all agree all the time, but it's amazing on how much we do agree and how much we are not wasting this opportunity, Bill. I mean, you've got probably a better sense of what an opportunity this is than most. Tell me what you think of what's happened and where we're going.
Why do you say that?
No,
actually,
not to put you on the spot.
5 minutes before we come up here, Seamus said, tell a story about growing the middle class. And I have a story that I think is it's an ultimate story of entrepreneurism and innovation and vision and what's possible in Nova Scotia. Must be 12 years ago, a man came to me and he said, I bought the old Northern Telecom factory in Amherst. And the Northern Telecom factory is 55,000 square feet. It's a big factory. In this factory, they used to remanufacture telephones, circuit boards, weather stations for companies in Canada and the United States. But it's all really kind of old-fashioned technology at the time. So anyway, this man invited me up to the factory. He had bought the factory. The last time I was in it was full of machinery, equipment, workbenches, and everything. So we met at the office of the factory, and he said, come on out and see what we're doing. So we walked out to the shop floor. He opened the big white doors, and there was nothing. It was absolutely empty. The building was empty. The floor was shiny. The lights were reflecting off the floor. I remember just like yesterday, and I thought to myself, what is this man thinking? But he said, I am going to build the world's best LED streetlight in this factory. And actually, Seamus, I just looked down, he's right there, Chuck Cartmill, and I didn't know he was going to be here, but he's right there.
On.
But LED roadway lighting now ships a light fixture, street light fixtures, to 60 countries around the world from Amherst, Nova Scotia. And they started with nothing. But he had a vision. He's the ultimate entrepreneur, in my opinion, with a vision. He's like the Energizer Bunny. He never stops. And he used government programs here and there where he needed them, but he had to because the business grew so fast. But he created the best street light in the world, and it's now shining in 60 countries from this province, but it's all him. And if you give us an entrepreneur with a vision and a little credibility, we can help that entrepreneur grow his business.
Right on.
You could say he's a shining example.
He is a shining example.
But honestly, okay,
if
sorry
I could
about
take
that.
one
Sorry,
more minute, I want
Try
to
the
tell
veal.
I want to tell you a little bit of the story that I think is kind of interesting. He hired the world's leading opticians to design this light. It's got 48 LED units in it, and each one points in a different direction so that there's a homogeneous field of light on the street. And he hired the best experts in the world. He had complicated computer programs to design these lights, and they put it together. It didn't work. The lights were all over the place. So he came here to the Oxford Theatre in Halifax. He hired the theatre, closed it down, shone the light up on the screen, and they manually moved the light fixtures around until they had the right thing, and then they locked it in, and that's the light that is in 60 countries around the world. So that's innovation.
I think actually, to Bill's point, it's really important to point out that innovation and entrepreneurship and all of those wonderful things that are happening aren't just happening in cities. They're happening in rural areas. In the last couple of months in my riding, I've had the, that's right, in the last couple of months in my riding, I've had the ability to tour an aerospace facility, people who are developing video games, and a new green technologies plant, Sustain Technologies, which is actually converting plastic to diesel biofuel. And that is, I mean, like, this is all happening in rural Nova Scotia, so it's pretty exciting.
I wanted to bring up as well the Ocean Supercluster, which, you know, sounds kind of wonky, but it is a massive game changer for our region. Yeah. We had to compete for this. So this is, you know, Navdeep's baby, I guess. You know, where we had, applaud Navdeep, who is also in charge of ACOA, which is with his leadership, and I would argue with our leadership, ACOA has been doing some marvelous things. But the idea here, for those people who aren't familiar with superclusters, is building a bunch of five Silicon Valleys in Canada. And proposals had to come, and they came from regions right across the country, where we asked the private sector to get together and to make a pitch. And we were particularly focused on small and medium-sized enterprises and growing them. And they had to put their money forward. So they had to, they're the ones with the skin in the game, and the ones who made the cut, we would match. And one of those that made the cut was the Ocean Supercluster for Atlantic Canada. It was a competitive process. We had $150 million in private sector investment come forward from all sorts of different industries. And it caused a lot of these industries and companies that had never worked together, and I would argue 4 provinces that sometimes don't always work together, it caused everybody to be part of one team and one vision to take on the world. And they did that. And so we, in turn, will be matching them dollar for dollar. This is an incredible opportunity for Atlantic Canada to take what we know, which is the ocean, and to combine it with some high tech that we now know and are very familiar with and understand how it can benefit both urban and rural, and really just elevate our game on the world stage. This is something we'll be talking about, I'm convinced, for years to come. I think it's an amazing opportunity.
Couldn't agree more, Seamus. In one of the biggest challenges we have, certainly in Prince Edward Island, and this is probably the case right across the Atlantic region, is our historic dependence on primary industries and the seasonality of those primary industries. And I think every single person that goes into public life, whether it's at the provincial or the federal level, at some point says, in Atlantic Canada, what we need to do is diversify our economy. And this very, very much plays to our strengths. In our little part of the world, a shining example of that is the incredible growth in the biotech sector. And so the ocean supercluster, in many, many ways, has us playing to our strengths, the collaboration between universities, industry, and governments to accelerate that is something that can only be positive for our region. On the subject of collaboration, I want to come back for 1 second to the Atlantic Growth Strategy. The Atlantic Growth Strategy was not in our election platform. It wasn't in the mandate of any minister. But shortly after we were elected, it became obvious to a few that, look, the stars are aligned here, folks. 32 Liberal members of Parliament, 4 Liberal governments in the provinces with a bit of runway. We have a unique opportunity here to do some historic things. And that was the vision behind the people that got together in Lawrence Macaulay's barn to put this together. And we really, truly are today seeing the results and seeing the roadmap that's been laid out for greater opportunities going forward.
One of the pillars of the Atlantic Growth Strategy is immigration. We have, as many of you know, a particular demographic issue in Atlantic Canada. We don't have, our population is getting older, and we're not having, people just aren't having the same amount of children that they used to. So, how do you supplement that? How do you make sure that the economy continues to grow? And Serge, of course, is the Parliamentary Secretary for Immigration, as I said.
Yeah, no, exactly. And this project is great. Like, if you look at it, like, it's 2,000 newcomers per year for the next 3 years, plus their family also. Alors, c'est un projet très, très important pour le Canada Atlantique, le projet pilote d'immigration. Et puis, ça va faire en sorte que nos entreprises qui ont besoin de main-d'œuvre qualifiée, vous savez, même si on a une population en Atlantique, comme on a dit tantôt, qui est vieillissante, une population qui est aussi, qu'on perd beaucoup de gens, mais on a besoin de plus de gens pour remplacer ces employés-là dans nos secteurs clés de notre économie. Alors, de faire en sorte d'avoir 2000 personnes par année pour les 3 prochaines années, plus leurs familles qui vont pouvoir venir ici, aider ces entreprises-là à faire en sorte que le manque de main-d'œuvre qualifiée qu'ils ont besoin, alors ces personnes vont être capables de le combler. Alors, c'est un très, très beau projet. But one thing we have to remember, it's all great to have those new people come here with their family, but each and every one of us in this room, we have a responsibility. Please, if you see a newcomer to your area, like, renting a house near to you, buying a house, go see them. Go ask them what's their name. Take them to the festival. Show them the school. Because if we want to retain them, this is the only way we'll be able to do it, to make sure that each and every one of you make sure that they feel that they are part of your community. So we have all a responsibility that for those newcomers to come here and stay in Atlantic Canada.
I think to Serge's point, he's right. One of the things that I hear most when I'm talking to some of my businesses is they can't get employees. We were talking backstage earlier, and the average age of a fish plant worker in New Brunswick is 62 years old. Think about that, 62. And I think in Nova Scotia it's about 57, 58. So we need to have a growth of population. It's like Premier McNeil said earlier, if we want to keep our schools open, if we want our hospitals to continue to provide full services, we need the people. We need the people, but it's not just about bringing them here. It's about making them feel welcome and wanting to stay in Atlantic Canada. So that is on all of us. It's not just, we can do the legwork to make sure people are able to come to the area, but it's on the population in our communities to make sure they're welcome and they want to stay.
Just to illustrate the point, I'll tell you about a couple of polls. There was one poll done of new immigrants and refugees in cities right across the country. And some of the most welcoming and hospitable were in Atlantic Canada. And I'm very proud of the fact that St. John's was #1. Just saying. And they just asked, I mean, you know, they just, how do you feel about how you're welcomed? The funnier one, though, was a poll that they did. It was a survey that was done a little while ago, just about Newfoundlanders' attitudes, Labradorians' attitudes about the economy in general. And, you know, they were, you know, we certainly in our province have some significant challenges, as Premier Ball cited earlier, but there was one real gem in there that I found and I just loved. And that was, they asked Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, on the issue of immigration, do you feel that our population is as diverse as the rest of Canada? And over half said, oh, yes. So if you look at the numbers, roughly in the national average of those born away, not born in Canada, but born away and now living in Canada, it's roughly about 22%. And in Newfoundland, it's 2. So, I mean, I joke now, but I mean, growing up in St. John's back in the day, my idea of diversity was Protestants. I did, right? You know? I mean, our schools were segregated, Catholic or Protestant, and Heidi Bownell's in the audience there, and Heidi and I worked with Brian Tobin on a constitutional amendment and a referendum in order to have public schools for the first time in Newfoundland and Labrador, which was great. But now, when I look at St. John's, and I'm looking at the rest of the province too, I'm looking at the number, where I grew up in Goose Bay, Labrador, the number of Filipino people. If you had told me 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there'd be a Filipino community in Goose Bay, Labrador, my gosh. But the richness that they give us, you know, it's amazing. And the way I interpreted that poll in Newfoundland is, you know, the fact that people felt that they were just as diverse as Toronto. We didn't want to be left out of the party. That's all. This is an amazing thing that's happening in this country, and I think a particularly amazing thing that's happening in our region, Bill.
Seamus, you're talking about schools. Where'd you go to university?
There are, of the 5 of us, put them up, 4 St. FX grads here.
On this stage.
4. It's okay, Serge. It's okay.
For those of you who don't
University
know,
of Moncton,
the
guys, Acadian and Francophone University.
Seamus, I'd like to make a comment about a COA. Because I was just elected 29 years ago for the first time. I'm on my 6th Prime Minister. I've seen a whole lot of different permutations and combinations, as you can imagine, of a COA.
From all sides.
From all sides, all sides. And about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was an article in the Globe and Mail criticizing a COA because we didn't have an Atlantic minister. And I want everybody to know that a COA works better right today than it's ever worked before. It's a 100% level playing field. When we had a minister of a COA, the decisions were always kind of tilted, if you know what I mean. There was always a little bit of political influence. But right now, a COA programs are decided based 100% on merit. And it's the best system and the best process that I've ever seen for a COA through the 29 years I've been at this. And we're very lucky to have Josh Bragg as Minister Bain's Atlantic assistant. Is Josh here?
No, but he's got a posse, which is good.
Well,
Josh's posse.
Josh Bragg works with every member of Parliament from Atlantic Canada in Minister Bain's office to make sure we have the right information, we're up to date. He's, I just can't say enough about him. And, but between Minister Bains, and Josh, we're well served by a COA. We have great local people, great people in Ottawa, and the system really works.
Go ahead, Serge.
Seamus, I know we're talking about the need of workforce that we need also with the immigration, but one thing I think we have to remember also is the workforce that we already have in some sector, like Sean said, primary sector, like as you know, we have a lot of seasonal industry in Atlantic Canada, whether it's in the fishery sector, agriculture sector, tourism sector. And one subject that is important to my heart, maybe it's a subject that it's maybe not well understand. It's the employment insurance issue that we have. As you know, like this year, the employment insurance rate went down. And this is a great news, by the way. It's a very great news. So that thanks to all the small business mostly that create a lot of jobs in Atlantic Canada, but across Canada. But this had an effect also on our seasonal worker. For example, I have 11 fish plant in my riding. This year, because of the EI rate that went down, That means that more people needs more hours to qualify to EI, and they will have a period of up to maybe 2 to 3 weeks to, for some, 3 months without any benefit at all, so zero on the table to provide for their need of their family. Is there a job there? Yes, of course, there is a job there, but there will not be any enough job in my riding to fill all those people that are in need at this moment. So what we did, we put in place a $240 million in this year budget to help those people having their benefit until they return to our fish sector, but also a formation component in this budget to make sure that they are trained to fill the job that we need also in our sector. And please remind something. When I hear people say that those people are lazy, it's not true. Like, people working in some fish plant in my area are working like 16 to 20 hours a day sometime for 3 months to process our fish and seafood. They are not lazy, and I think the liberal value that we have, it's protect those people that are the most in need, and that's what we did in the budget to help those people having some benefit until they can return back to their work. That is so important to us, fishery sector, agriculture sector, and tourism sector. And I'm very proud that we were able to keep these people in this sector, because it's a big part of our economy, the seasonal economy in our Atlantic Canada provinces.
There was a comment made yesterday, for those of you who were here, by David Axelrod, and I think it resonated with a number of people. It's about the work. Right? It's about who we work for, and it's about getting the work done. And I guess one of the benefits of being in government is that you have access to the players. You have access to the Prime Minister and ministers and the various levers of government. And you know, I come from a province particularly known for its ranters and roarers. And as some have seen in the House periodically on issues affecting veterans, I do have the ability to rant and to roar. But it takes up an awful lot of time and energy, and you know, for me, it's about the work. So there are some things that, you know, I want to tell you that are done behind the scenes that aren't necessarily sexy, but are vitally important to our economies. And just briefly, I wanted to mention, yes, the environmental assessment process, because I represent a province, the 7 members of Parliament, Newfoundland and Labrador. We are Canada's other oil-producing province. We are the other oil-producing province. It is, and we are even more dependent on oil and gas revenues than Alberta. So environmental assessments sound very esoteric, but getting them done right, not lowering the standards, but getting them done in an efficient way and in a timely way, makes us competitive with people, with the UK, with Norway, with other jurisdictions where oil companies can go. And you know what? It was something that the previous government completely made a dog's breakfast of, mainly because they forgot about my province. Yeah. They forgot that we had an offshore industry. And the regulations that they put in place were so cumbersome, it was affecting our competitiveness. And the 7 of us, and I have to single out Nick Whalen in particular, who knows this inside and out. And you know, we went to the Prime Minister, we went to Minister Carr, we went to Minister McKenna, and we got it done. We got it done. It took a long time, but let me tell you that Newfoundland and Labrador's offshore oil industry figures prominently in our new environmental assessment process. We are not lowering the standards on the environment. We are not doing that at all. We're just getting things done more efficiently. And I think it's because we have a different perspective on government. We want government to work. That's what differentiates us as liberals. We understand that it can work if you work at it. And I just wanted to, you know, that's something that you may not hear about, but trust me, it makes the difference to the future of my entire province. And that's something that we could do from the inside.
Can I just, I'm just going to pick up on something Seamus said when he said that he felt that the previous government forgot about Newfoundland, Labrador. I would say that by bringing 32 MPs from Atlantic Canada to Ottawa, I think it was obvious to a lot of people that Atlantic Canada was forgotten by the previous government. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen again in 2019.
And on that, Bernadette, I think the way we work all together, like what is good for Seamus or Sean or Bernadette or Bill is good for Serge Cormier, because we support each other all the time, and I think we're great working together. It's an honor to work with them. And just maybe one more thing for me, it's an honor to represent my riding, but I will not have been able to do it with such good volunteers, Seamus, that helped me so much. Two of them are here. It's my campaign manager that's here, Roberto Dugas, my financial manager, Isabelle Taillot, that will become a new MLA in New Brunswick so far, and our chair, new chair of Atlantic Caucus also took over, Bernadette is there. So it's a teamwork, guys. And thank you very much for all your support that you gave us since the past two years, and we will continue to work hard as an Atlantic Caucus for all of you guys in this room.
Bill, it is a mantra of the government that the environment and the economy go hand in hand. And you said to me backstage, Seamus, make sure you ask me about how the environment and the economy go hand in hand. So, Bill, I'm asking you.
What a coincidence.
I know. I take instruction well from Bill.
No, a really good example of how that works is in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia. There's a family business there that manufactures batteries. They're similar to car batteries, but they're bigger. They've always built them for locomotives and ships. They're big lead storage batteries. Minister Baines and I toured the facility a few months ago, and we were startled. Their business is up 28%, and 55% of the batteries are for green energy storage from windmills and solar panels. 55% of their business, it's gone from 0 to 55% of their business. And if that is not the economy and industry working together, nothing is. It's a perfect example of how we can grow the economy by addressing the environment.
We had Atlantic, yes. Just a quick story, but we had an Atlantic caucus retreat in the great riding of Long Range Mountains. And our hostess was Goody Hutchings, who you saw up earlier, and anyway, it was a phenomenal time. We were driving, myself and Cindy Jenkins, who's my chief of staff, and she was driving up in the front. And we're driving through beautiful Grosse Moorne Park, windy roads. Bill and his wife were in the back, but Bill had to talk about the armory in his riding, and it was very important to him. And so he was making a pitch about how the armory is important, and he took out his phone, and he's showing me pictures in the passenger seat. I mean, you've never seen an advocate like Bill Casey, right? But it got to the point where Cindy's driving, and she's, and he's going, look at it, Cindy, see, this is what it looks like. Put the phone down, Bill, for God's sake, she's trying to drive, and it's windy roads here in the Long Range Mountains.
Yesterday,
yes.
Yesterday, I was told that a project I've been working on only for 17 years is making progress. I'm really quite excited about it. I learned about it at this conference, but it's making progress, and we should have an announcement on that in a few weeks. But 17 years, 4 prime ministers, I don't know how many ministers, but I can be persistent.
He plays a long game. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just say I've got a map that's hiding up in that's in my office, and it shows Atlantic Canada and Newfoundland and Labrador. And instead of showing it on the end of Canada, it shows it as the center of the world. You can fly from St. John's, you can fly 3 hours to Toronto or 4 hours to Heathrow. And people like François Philippe and the efforts of this government is opening up Atlantic Canada to the world. It is opening up this country to the world. We are at the center of the world. Let's take advantage of it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.